In the quiet fields of Green Valley, one man just wanted to grow tomatoes, raise his granddaughter, and maybe teach a few kids how to tell cow poop from compost. But when the pastel army of Rosewood Heights moved in, with their fountains, fences, and HOA fine print, the war on Miller Acres began. What started as a few polite letters about roosters and wheelbarrows spiraled into legal ultimatums, secret real estate deals, and a full-blown plan to bulldoze generations of heritage for a cul-de-sac. But Jack Miller didn't back down. He launched Airstrike against HOA Day, armed with nothing but rubber chickens, community love, and one very determined little girl. What followed? A viral revolution, a clipboard queen dethroned, and a showdown that proved you can't silence the land, especially when it moves. Don't miss this unbelievable true story of one farmer, one HOA tyrant, and one chicken-fueled uprising that shook the suburbs. Subscribe now to Real HOA Drama for more battles, betrayals, and backyard rebellions, because you never know what's hiding behind the white picket fence. This is HOA like you've never seen it. In the heart of Green Valley, where the sun rose slow and golden over acres of dew-drenched fields, lived a man who didn't just farm the land. He spoke its language. Jack Miller, third-generation farmer and full-time stubborn optimist, ran Miller Acres, a patch of heaven passed down like an heirloom watch, ticking steadily through the decades. The farm had seen world wars, droughts, and the Great Cornfield Fire of '89. Don't ask. But Jack? Jack was still there, boots muddy, hands calloused, heart wide open. The land wasn't just dirt to him. It was memory. It was legacy. It was home. And sharing that home with him was Ellie, his 10-year-old spitfire of a granddaughter, who thought chickens were sacred, tractors were thrilling, and iPads were boring. Since her parents passed, Jack had taken her in, and the farm had taken on a new kind of purpose. Ellie had the kind of curiosity that made flowers bloom faster, just to be noticed. She was the heart of Miller Acres, and Jack knew it. Their days followed a sacred rhythm. Wake before the rooster crowed, or in Ellie's case, chase the rooster for fun. Tend the crops, feed the animals, and in the afternoons, open the farm to school kids from nearby towns. Jack loved teaching them about compost, crop rotation, and how to identify cow poop from 50 feet away, essential survival skills, obviously. The laughter, the learning, the smell of fresh hay mixed with hope. This was life. Simple but honest. But peace, as it often does, came with an expiration date. Like a bad storm rolling in without warning, change arrived in the form of sleek SUVs and pastel-colored moving vans. A brand new housing development, Rosewood Heights, sprouted up practically overnight, right on the edge of Jack's land. They brought fancy fences, backyard fountains, and people who thought squirrels were exotic wildlife. Suddenly, the same dirt road that once led only to Miller Acres was shared with manicured driveways and monthly HOA newsletters. And from the chaos emerged a woman with a clipboard, a mission, and a wardrobe full of matching cardigans. Karen Whitmore. Karen didn't walk, she marched. She didn't talk, she addressed. And when she introduced herself as the president of the Rosewood Heights Homeowners Association, she did it like she expected the clouds to part and a bald eagle to screech overhead. Jack couldn't tell if she wanted to bake him cookies or serve him a citation. "Mr. Miller," she said, scanning the fields with a nose wrinkled like she'd just smelled compost for the first time, "we're here to bring order and elegance to this community. And we'd love your cooperation." Jack tipped his hat and smiled. "Ma'am, this farm's been here since before indoor plumbing. But I'll try not to offend your elegance with my tomatoes." Karen didn't laugh. Jack figured that was going to be a problem. Still, he didn't worry much at first. He figured they'd settle in, get used to the cows and the occasional goat escape. Maybe Ellie would even make some new friends over there. But Karen had other plans. She didn't see Miller Acres as charming or rustic. To her, it was unruly, wild, an eyesore in a canvas of HOA-approved beige. And Jack had no idea just how far she'd go to turn his legacy into a liability. The battle for Miller Acres hadn't begun yet, but the soil was shifting. The first letter came folded like origami, neat, crisp, and passive-aggressive enough to cut through steel. It was from the Rosewood Heights HOA, typed in 12-point times New Roman with a tone that could politely tell you to burn your house down and still sign off with warmest regards. Jack unfolded the envelope at the breakfast table while Ellie fed a chicken a Cheerio under the table. He squinted at the page, reading aloud. Notice of community concern. We've received reports of auditory disturbances originating from Miller Acres, namely, the sound of crowing roosters and lowing cattle disrupting early morning peace. He blinked, then laughed. They're cows, not karaoke singers, he muttered. By the end of the week, another letter arrived, this one noting visible disarray on the property, specifically a rusty wheelbarrow near the fence line and the non-standard placement of hay bales. Jack wondered what the standard placement of hay was exactly. Maybe Karen preferred hers arranged like throw pillows. Then came the visit. Jack was oiling the old tractor out back when he heard the sharp crunch of impractical heels on gravel. He turned to find Karen Whitmore, clad in a peach pantsuit and holding her ever-present clipboard like a weapon of bureaucratic mass destruction. Her expression was equal parts superiority and sanitized concern. "Mr. Miller," she said, offering a tight-lipped smile that looked more like indigestion, "we need to have a conversation about the aesthetic impact of your property." Jack wiped his hands on his jeans and leaned against the tractor. "You mean the cows, the crops, or the compost?" Karen didn't laugh. "Again. This neighborhood," she said, eyes scanning the horizon like a general surveying a battlefield, "has expectations. Standards. Rosewood Heights is a curated community. And frankly, the clamor of livestock and the visual clutter of farm equipment, they're becoming disruptive." Jack nodded slowly. "Well, ma'am, this here's a farm. It clucks, moos, and grows stuff. Comes with the territory." Karen clicked her pen in a way that somehow felt threatening. "We're simply asking for cooperation, Mr. Miller. Clean lines. Quiet nights. Uniform beauty." Jack gestured to the fields behind him, glowing green under the morning sun. "You're looking at the most honest beauty in the county." "Then maybe the county needs a makeover," she replied, and turned on her heel, her clipboard swinging like the gavel of a judge who'd already made up her mind. Jack exhaled long and slow, a knot twisting in his chest, not anger, exactly. Just dread. The kind that crawls in when you realize your neighbors don't see your home as a blessing, but a blemish. Things got worse when Ellie came home from her first day at her new school. She didn't say much at dinner, pushed peas around her plate. And when Jack finally asked what was wrong, she mumbled, "Some kids called me a farm freak. Said we smell like manure and horse pee." Jack's fork froze midair. "They said I live in a barn," she whispered. He reached across the table, took her hand in his weathered one, and said gently, "Barns are full of life, Ellie. That smell? That's the scent of hard work and clean earth. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small for growing up surrounded by it." But that night, as she slept hugging her stuffed goat, Jack stared out at the blinking porch light across the road, Karen's house, and something shifted. He'd spent his whole life making peace with the land. Now, it seemed, he'd have to make war with those who didn't understand it. Logan Barnes wasn't exactly your typical HOA board member. He was 28, wore Vans to meetings, and actually read the bylaws before quoting them. Most of the Rosewood Heights crew saw HOA service as a stepping stone to power or, at the very least, a good excuse to tell neighbors their grass was too long. Logan just wanted to keep things fair and, maybe, make sure people weren't getting fined over things like wind chimes or mailboxes that didn't vibe with the aesthetic. But lately, things weren't adding up. Karen Whitmore had always been intense. Clipboard queen, queen of code enforcement, and queen of "I noticed your porch lights are one watt too bright." But after the showdown with Jack Miller, Logan noticed something shift. Karen wasn't just nitpicking anymore. She was strategizing, plotting, and something about it reeked, more than Jack's compost pile ever could. It started with a hushed conversation Karen had after a board meeting, voices low, door closed. Logan had stayed behind to clean up the leftover coffee and cookies. He wasn't eavesdropping, technically. The door just wasn't all the way shut. He caught snippets. Agricultural zoning loophole. Investment group out of Denver. Needs to be off that land by winter if we're going to break ground. Logan froze mid-cookie grab. Break ground? This wasn't about chickens or rusty tractors. This was a land grab. Over the next few weeks, Logan played the role of loyal board member by day, quiet, helpful, dependable, and undercover whistleblower by night. He started recording meetings on his phone, noting emails, and snapping pictures of Karen's off-the-record strategy sessions with a sharply dressed man named Brent from Golden Horizon Properties. That name didn't sit right. So Logan dug. Turns out, Golden Horizon was no mom and pop realty company. It was a development group known for gentrifying rural pockets, pressuring legacy landowners into selling, then flipping the property into upscale housing with names like Sycamore Reserve or Whispering Pines. And now, it seemed, they had their eyes on Miller Acres. Jack Miller didn't stand a chance, at least, not without knowing the game being played. The final straw came in the form of a thick envelope delivered to Jack's mailbox, stamped with HOA letterhead and wrapped in legal jargon. Inside was a formal notice of noncompliance with multiple HOA ordinances, noise violations, improper equipment storage, and unauthorized agricultural use of residential adjacent land. At the bottom, in bold lettering, cease and desist all agricultural operations within 30 days, or face legal action. Jack stared at the paper like it had just told him his entire life was a zoning error. Ellie found him on the porch, the paper crumpled in his hand, his knuckles white. Are they really going to shut us down, Grandpa? Jack didn't answer at first. Just looked out at the rows of corn swaying in the wind. They're trying, sweetheart. But they forgot one thing. What's that? He turned slowly, fire rising behind his tired eyes. They picked a fight with the wrong damn farmer. Meanwhile, Logan sat in his car across the street, recording one final memo on his phone. If you're hearing this, then Karen's gone full supervillain. She's selling out the neighborhood, and Jack's farm is ground zero. This isn't about community standards anymore, it's about greed. He hit save, looked toward the farmhouse, and nodded. It was time to tell Jack everything. The envelope was thicker this time, heavier somehow, like it knew the weight it carried. Jack didn't open it right away. He just sat on the porch, boots muddy, heart heavier than the old barn door hanging off its hinges. The chickens clucked lazily nearby. Ellie's laughter echoed faintly from the backyard as she chased a goat named Marvin, wearing one of her socks like a hat. But Jack wasn't smiling. When he finally slid the letter from its crisp shell, the bold black words hit him like a slap to the soul. Final notice. You are hereby ordered to cease all agricultural operations, including but not limited to the housing of livestock, within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in legal escalation and potential property reassessment. Signed, of course, Karen Whitmore, President, Rosewood Heights HOA. There it was. The chicken ultimatum. 30 days to tear down a lifetime. Jack folded the letter once, then again. His hands trembled, not with rage, but with something worse. Exhaustion. Doubt. That creeping whisper that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't worth the fight anymore. That night, the farm was quiet, eerily so. Even the cows seemed subdued, as if they sensed something was wrong. Jack wandered into the old study, a room that still smelled faintly of cedar and lilacs. On the shelf, untouched for years, sat a framed photograph. Claire. Her smile was still sunshine in a storm. Straw hat tilted on her head, dirt on her cheek, arms wrapped around a baby goat they'd rescued the day after their wedding. We're building something that matters, she'd said back then. Not just for us, but for whoever comes after. Jack sat down in his worn leather chair and stared at her photo, like it might answer him. Claire, he whispered, voice rough as dry soil. They want to take it. The whole damn thing. The land. The animals. Everything we built. I don't know if I've got anything left to fight with. He looked down, eyes stinging. The silence pressed against his ribs. And then he remembered. That first year, when they'd barely had enough to eat. When the old tractor broke down and Claire sold her wedding ring so they could buy seeds. When they dug trenches by hand, side by side, sweat mixing with laughter. When she lost their first baby, but still walked barefoot through the cornfields and said, "This place still grows life." Jack's breath caught in his throat. He stood slowly, walked to the photo, and placed a weathered palm against the glass. "I won't let him erase you," he murmured. "Not this land, not the sweat, not the stories buried in every root." Tears fell, slow, stubborn, like spring rain refusing to be rushed. Outside, lightning flickered far off in the distance. A storm was coming, and not just the kind that watered fields. Jack wiped his face with the back of his hand, squared his shoulders, and took one last look at Claire. "I've got 30 days, he said, voice steadier now. "So, I guess we better make 'em count." The next morning, the rooster crowed like it had something to prove. Jack was already up, black coffee in hand, staring out at the rising sun. He wasn't planning to sell anymore. He was planning to fight. It was a Tuesday when Logan Barnes showed up at Jack's porch looking like a man who'd just robbed the Pentagon. His hoodie was pulled over his head, sunglasses on, manila envelope in hand. He glanced over both shoulders like Karen Whitmore might jump out of a flower bed wielding a cease and desist order. Jack raised an eyebrow. "You in trouble, son?" Logan shoved the envelope into Jack's chest.
"No."
"But they're about to be." Inside were copies of confidential HOA meeting minutes, email chains between Karen and a real estate developer named Golden Horizon, and a detailed plan titled, "No Joke. Phase 2. Acquisition of adjoining agricultural parcel." That parcel was Miller Acres. Jack skimmed the documents, his jaw tightening like a wrench. They weren't just trying to find me, they were trying to bleed me out, then buy me out. Exactly, Logan said. "It's all here. They call your barn an eyesore obstruction. Your animals are natural sound pollutants. And your compost pile is, and I quote, a biological anomaly." Jack looked up, eyes blazing.
"Well,
if it's a war they want, I've got a chicken or two that'd like a word." That night, Jack sat at his kitchen table, surrounded by bills, zoning documents, and a plate of half-eaten meatloaf. The weight of injustice pressed heavy on his shoulders, until Ellie wandered in, clutching her sketchpad. "You okay, Grandpa?" Jack looked at her, then at the silly little drawing she held up, a chicken with aviator sunglasses, riding a rocket labeled "Farming is Freedom." He stared, then burst out laughing so hard, he snorted mashed potatoes through his nose. "You just gave me an idea, kiddo." Ellie's eyes lit up. "Are we going to prank them?" Jack leaned in, grin stretching ear to ear. "Not just a prank. A full-blown, barn-raising, rubber chicken luncheon, HOA flippin' spectacular." He grabbed a notepad and started scribbling. Inflatable planes, chicken toss, live music, homemade pies, t-shirts, make noise, not ordinances. Slogan, Airstrike against HOA Day. The name alone felt like a small act of rebellion. Jack would use humor where they used rules, joy where they brought fear, rubber chickens where they brought lawsuits. Over the next few days, word spread like wildfire across the county. Jack called in old favors, folks he'd helped plant, harvest, repair tractors for. The rural network came alive. Gary brought his trailer of bounce houses, one shaped like a pig. Mary Ellen from 3 farms over offered to bake 40 pies. Dave, the ex-Marine turned goat farmer, built a launch cannon for the rubber chickens, because of course he did. And Ellie? Ellie became the creative director of the revolution. She designed posters, flyers, digital invites, complete with angry cartoon chickens dropping eggs on tiny houses labeled HOA HQ. One flyer read, "Live free or pluck off." Jack watched her work, heart swelling. It wasn't just about the farm anymore. It was about showing Ellie that you never back down when someone tries to take what's rightfully yours. They hung signs all along the county road. "Farming is freedom. Bring your pitchforks," figuratively. "Rubber chickens provided. Rage not included." As the big day drew near, Jack stood at the edge of his field, watching the wind ripple across the crops like applause. For the first time in weeks, he felt alive, not cornered. They wanted him to go quietly. Instead, he was bringing the noise, rubber chickens and all. The morning of airstrike against HOA Day broke with a sunrise so bold it looked like the sky itself had RSVP'd. Bright orange streaks painted the horizon as families in pickup trucks and minivans rolled into Miller Acres, carrying lawn chairs, baked goods, and, per Jack's very specific request, rubber chickens. Lots of them. There were banners strung between silos. Farming is freedom. No HOA, no problem. Chicken overlords welcome. The inflatable planes swayed proudly in the breeze, bobbing over hay bales like some surreal cartoon air show. Country music played from speakers hooked up to a solar panel, and the smell of fresh pies and grilled corn filled the air. Kids painted signs. Teens live-streamed on TikTok. Elderly folks danced in their overalls like no one was watching, except they were, because a local news crew had shown up with cameras rolling. The event was part protest, part party, part rural renaissance. And then came the black SUV. It crawled down the dirt path like it was allergic to gravel. Out stepped Karen Whitmore, flanked by two HOA board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, maybe a Pilates class or a silent retreat. Karen wore her usual matching pastel power suit and a look like she'd just sniffed a compost heap. She held a fresh clipboard, labeled in bold marker, "Compliance violations urgent." Jack spotted her from across the field. He tipped his hat, grinning like a man who'd baited the bear on purpose. "Karen," he called. "Glad you could make it. Want to join the chicken toss?" She narrowed her eyes. "This is a violation of every standard we uphold." Jack chuckled. "Well, we're upholding chickens today. Would you like one?" Just then, a tiny girl with pigtails and face paint walked up to Karen, holding out a bright yellow rubber chicken with both hands. "Here, ma'am," she said sweetly. "You need to play. It'll make your frown go away." The crowd around them exploded with laughter. Someone shouted, "Karen's been recruited by the Chicken Rebellion." The moment was captured, of course, phones raised high, flashes blinking. Karen's face turned a shade of red, usually reserved for overripe tomatoes. "I will not participate in this mockery," she snapped, slapping the chicken aside like it had personally insulted her HOA charter. Jack raised an eyebrow. "Bit harsh to the poultry, don't you think?" She spun toward him, voice like ice. "This entire event is a blatant violation. Public disturbance. Unauthorized signage. Unpermitted structures. And you're leading a coordinated defiance of community guidelines." Jack leaned on his pitchfork like a sheriff in a spaghetti western. "Ma'am, I'm leading a celebration of the land I own, the life I live, and the chickens that have more personality than some people I've met." Karen clenched her clipboard so hard it creaked. "You haven't heard the last of this, Mr. Miller. You will be held accountable." She turned sharply, heels sinking into the soft dirt as she stomped off toward her SUV, leaving a rubber chicken sadly flopped in the dust behind her. One of the HOA board members sheepishly picked it up, gave Jack an awkward shrug, and whispered, "Honestly, this is kind of fun." As the SUV drove off, dust trailing behind like a cartoon villain's exit cloud, the crowd burst into spontaneous applause. Someone started a chant. "Rub-BR. Chickens. Rub-BR. Chickens." Jack laughed so hard he nearly dropped his lemonade. But deep down, he knew Karen wasn't done. That wasn't a retreat. It was a declaration of war, in paperwork form. Still, today wasn't about her. Today was for the people. For Ellie. For the soil under his boots. And for every rubber chicken launched in the name of liberty. What started with a chicken toss and a grumpy HOA president swatting away a toy like it carried disease turned into a movement. By sundown, #RubberChickenRebellion had exploded across social media. It started with a few Facebook posts from local parents, pictures of their kids holding signs like "Cluck the rules" and "Chickens have rights too." Then came the TikToks, one of Jack pretending to call in an airstrike over the loudspeaker, another showing Karen getting handed a chicken by a pigtail-clad toddler. By midnight, the tag had gone viral. Twitter, or whatever Elon was calling it this month, lit up with stories from across the country. People who'd been fined for having a garden in their front yard. A retired vet who had to hide his American flag behind a bush. One man claimed the HOA sued him for building a wheelchair ramp that didn't match the aesthetic color palette of his house. Suddenly, Jack Miller, just a guy with a pitchfork and a grudge, was a symbol. A folk hero in flannel. A modern-day David going up against the bureaucratic Goliath in a pastel pantsuit. And the world was watching. By Friday, Jack was sitting under the big oak tree, trying to fix a busted hose, when a news van rolled up his driveway. A reporter hopped out, heels sinking into the dirt, smiling like she'd found the pot of gold at the end of a hay bale. "Mr. Miller, do you have a minute for Channel 8? Jack wiped his hands on his jeans.
Sure.
"But I charge extra if you want me to look handsome on camera." The interview aired that night. Jack, in his best flannel, talking straight to camera. "I'm not against order," he said. "I'm against outsiders moving in and deciding that the land I bled into, that my wife planted dreams in, that I'm raising my granddaughter on somehow doesn't belong. Farming isn't messy. It's life. It feeds your table, fills your lungs, and teaches you how to work hard. And I won't apologize for it." The phones at the station lit up. Emails poured in. A state senator tweeted support. And the Rubber Chicken Rebellion, that strange little protest with inflatable planes and pie contests, was now national news. Meanwhile, Logan Barnes had been quiet.
Too quiet.
Until he wasn't. Late Saturday night, Logan posted a thread titled, "What Your HOA Doesn't Want You to Know." It contained screenshots of emails between Karen Whitmore and a shady developer from Golden Horizon. The messages laid out a clear and coordinated plan. Weaponize HOA policy. Drain the farmer financially.
Push him to sell.
Buy low.
Rezone.
Build luxury homes. One email even read, "Once the animals are gone and the place is silent, we can start offering buyout options. Use the nuisance angle to maintain pressure." It was signed, KW. The internet exploded again, but this time with fury. Karen's name trended next to words like corruption, scandal, and cluckstorm. Petitions began circulating calling for her removal. Local news ran segments titled, "HOA overreach or land grab? Can a chicken start a revolution?" And Jack just kept working the fields. His phone rang constantly. CNN called. A podcast wanted to fly him to New York. Someone from Washington wanted to discuss rural resilience legislation. But he told them all the same thing. "I've got goats that still need feeding, ma'am. And unless your interview includes helping me muck the barn, I ain't flying anywhere." Still, he understood now. This wasn't just his fight anymore. It was everyone's who'd ever been told to trim their life down to fit someone else's idea of beauty. Everyone who'd ever been fined for standing out. Everyone who wanted to live loud, free, and a little bit muddy. The backlash came like a thunderstorm after a drought. Loud, long overdue, and impossible to ignore. The once invincible Karen Whitmore was now the subject of every whispered conversation on Maple Street, every side-eye on the sidewalk, and every scathing meme shared in the neighborhood Facebook group. Her signature clipboard had gone from symbol of authority to punchline. Someone even spray-painted #RubberChickenQueen on the HOA mailbox kiosk. Tastefully, of course. Inside Rosewood Heights, the tides were turning. The HOA board, once too afraid or indifferent to challenge her, began calling special meetings without her. Even her closest ally, Gordon Phelps, vice president and self-declared lawn care purist, had gone quiet after the email leaks. Karen tried to maintain control, issuing more violation notices, citing obscure bylaws no one had read since 2002, but it was like shouting into a storm. Then came the night of the community forum. It was held in the Rosewood Heights Rec Center, a beige building that normally hosted Pilates classes and HOA potlucks with suspiciously underseasoned casseroles. But tonight, the place was packed wall to wall. Residents, reporters, even a few farmers from out of town, all came to hear what would happen next. Jack Miller sat near the back in his cleanest flannel. Next to him, Ellie held a poster she'd made herself. "Let us be loud. Let us be free. Let me keep my chickens, please." Karen entered to polite, frosty silence. Her usual confident stride had dulled to a cautious shuffle. For the first time, she looked unsure. The meeting opened with statements from board members. Most danced around the issue, but one brave soul finally said it. Karen, we need to talk about your emails. About your relationship with Golden Horizon. About how we ended up targeting a neighbor who's done nothing but grow food and raise his granddaughter. The room murmured in agreement. Karen stood, clipboard clutched like a shield. I've always acted with the best interest of the community in mind. A voice piped up from the crowd. You mean your vision of the community? And then, Ellie stood. She wasn't tall. She wasn't loud. But somehow, the room fell silent as the 10-year-old walked to the front, clutching her poster to her chest. She turned to face the crowd, voice soft but clear.
Hi.
I'm Ellie Miller. I live at Miller Acres with my grandpa Jack. I just want to say something. Jack sat up straighter, heart in his throat. Some kids at school said I smell like goat poop. Ellie continued, sparking a few chuckles. But I like that smell. It means we're taking care of things. It means the animals are happy. It means my grandpa is doing something good. She looked directly at Karen now. I don't understand rules that say you can't have chickens if they make you smile, or that tractors are ugly, or that trees have to be small and perfect. I just want to keep living with my grandpa and the animals and the big sky. I just want to help things grow. Silence. Not uncomfortable. Not judgmental. Just heavy with meaning. Karen blinked, her mouth opening slightly. But nothing came out. For the first time since this whole thing began, Karen Whitmore had no rebuttal. No ordinance to quote. No bylaw to hide behind. Just a little girl who told the truth so simply, so innocently, that even the sharpest claws of bureaucracy had to unclench. The room erupted into applause, not wild or theatrical, but steady, grounded. The kind of applause that said, "We hear you. We agree." Jack wiped his eyes with the back of his hand and whispered, "That's my girl." Karen sat down, quietly, and didn't speak for the rest of the night. A week after Ellie silenced a whole room with nothing but truth and a poster full of chickens, Jack Miller did something no one saw coming. He walked into the Rosewood Heights HOA office, wearing his Sunday flannel, holding a tray of homemade peach cobbler, and asked to speak at the next meeting. The HOA board, now fully aware of public opinion and painfully aware of how many neighbors were not on Karen's side, gave a cautious green light. And that's how Jack, the once targeted farmer, came to be the unexpected architect of peace. "I ain't here to rub anyone's nose in compost," he said that night, standing at the front of the rec center again, cobbler on the table next to him. "I'm here with a different kind of proposal." He cleared his throat, adjusted his cap, and looked out over a room that now included not only farmers and flannel-clad folks, but yoga moms, retirees, teenagers, and even, way in the back, Karen Whitmore herself. "I think it's time we stopped yelling across fences and started talking across tables," Jack said. "So, I'm proposing a community forum. Not just another HOA meeting with clipboards and coffee, but a place where all kinds of folks, old-timers, newcomers, chicken lovers, lawn perfectionists, can talk. Honestly, respectfully." A few eyebrows rose. But no one objected. Jack wasn't done. "Second," he continued, "I think we ought to make some room on that HOA board for folks who don't just care about hedge height. Folks who know the land, the people, the history. Put a community representative seat on the board. Elected by vote. Anyone with skin in the game oughta have a voice at the table." A small ripple of applause broke out. Logan grinned from the second row, nodding like a proud campaign manager. And finally, Jack said, eyes twinkling, "I propose we start an annual event, open to everyone.
Call it Farm Day for Families.
We'll open up Miller Acres, let the kids meet the animals, let the parents eat too much cobbler, and remind each other what real community looks like." Now the applause came stronger, warmer, like the room had been holding its breath and was finally allowed to exhale. Karen shifted in her seat. Her hair was less stiff that night. She wasn't wearing her HOA blue blazer, just a soft cardigan, and an expression that looked almost human. When the floor opened for responses, Karen stood. A few folks braced themselves for the return of the old Karen, the one who fined people for leaving their trash cans out 20 minutes past pickup. But she surprised them. "I may have forgotten what community means," she said slowly, her voice less sharp than usual. "I was trying so hard to keep things in order that I didn't see what I was squeezing out. I'd like to attend that forum, Mr. Miller. And if you'll have me, I'd like to help plan Farm Day." Jack raised an eyebrow, then smiled. "Only if you agree to wear overalls and try my wife's old pie recipe." A chuckle rippled through the crowd. Karen almost smiled. Almost. Over the following weeks, the idea blossomed. Posters for Farm Day for families went up in shop windows and on community message boards. A new section of the HOA charter was drafted to include community diversity protections, code for "Don't Mess with the Farmers." The first community forum was scheduled under the big oak at Miller Acres. Tables were set with wildflowers. Kids chased goats. One of the HOA board members was caught doing the chicken dance. Nobody fined him for it. And for the first time since Rosewood Heights had appeared on the edge of his fields, Jack no longer felt like an outsider on his own land. He felt like a neighbor again. 1 year later, the old gravel road leading to Miller Acres looked a little different. There were still the same wide fields, golden with late summer corn. The same wooden fences, patched with care. The same chickens pecking happily at the dirt. But now, there was also a freshly painted sign at the entrance, carved by a local artisan and hung with pride. Miller Acres, where community grows. Every Thursday morning, yellow school buses pulled in under the shade of the oak trees. Children spilled out, giggling, wide-eyed, ready to learn how carrots came from the ground and not from plastic bags at the store. Ellie, now 11 and an official junior farm guide, led them through the garden paths, teaching them how to plant lettuce, how to gently hold a baby chick, and, most importantly, how to listen to the land. The old tool shed had been transformed into a cozy learning center, filled with seed charts, watering cans, and a chalkboard that read, "Today's lesson: nature doesn't care about your HOA guidelines." Ellie added that one herself. And then there was the farmers' market pavilion, built with the help of neighbors, yes, even those from Rosewood Heights. Every Sunday, it came alive with homemade jams, wildflower bouquets, fresh eggs, and the kind of laughter you only hear when people know they belong. And in the middle of it all, Karen Whitmore.
No clipboard.
No blazer. Just a wide-brimmed sun hat, a canvas tote full of rhubarb, and a laugh that came a little easier now. After everything that happened, Karen had taken a long look in the mirror, and then a longer walk through Miller Acres. What she saw and felt changed her. Now she volunteered as a community engagement advisor, helping bridge the gap between old Green Valley traditions and new Rosewood residents. She coordinated story hours under the apple trees, wrote grants for urban gardening projects, and yes, once even helped rescue a goat from the roof of the chicken coop. Jack had stopped calling her Karen the clipboard and started calling her Karen from the co-op. It made her laugh every time. That afternoon, Jack sat in his old rocking chair on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the scene unfold before him. Ellie stood in the garden, surrounded by a dozen fourth graders planting sunflower seeds. Her overalls were covered in dirt. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was beaming. Beside her, Karen knelt to help a boy press soil around a sprouting tomato plant. A chicken strutted by and pooped near someone's shoe. The kid squealed. The goat on the roof bleated proudly. Jack rocked back and smiled. The battle had been long, loud, and sometimes ridiculous. But here they were, still standing, still growing, still laughing. Not just a farm, not just a home, but a community reborn. He took a slow sip of his coffee, let the moment breathe, then said, softly, but with a grin that stretched all the way to his boots, "They thought they could wipe out a farm with rules. But it turns out the land talks back, sometimes with a chicken."